dominion, and all belong to God. He establishes order in the heights of heaven. Can his forces be numbered? Upon whom does his light not rise? What is man that you are mindful of him?
His name was Anguterzog.
This happened a long time ago. It is not written. My grandfather told me under the stars. His name was Anguatizwak. He was the spiritual leader of our clan. He helped our people, the Inuit, form their thoughts. He told us when it was time to break camp and move on. We lived on the northern shore of the Big Island, the one the Anglos call Baffin. When Anguatizwak was getting to have hair like snow, he heard about God from an Inuk who had come up from the south. The Inuk spoke of a new belief, of someone named Jisuzi. He said he was the Son of God. At first, Anguatizwak did not understand what he heard, but he was curious, for his job was to explain spiritual mysteries to the people. And that is when the hidden things began to move inside himself. A vision came to him. He went on a long journey to search for truth. For a long time he could find nothing. But one day he found a place where the light and the dark came together. He could not go into the light or into the dark. So he climbed into a gap between them. He went up and up and up until he found a door. But he could not get in. And so he awoke from his dream. Anguatizwak could not understand this. He thought maybe the door would open if he followed the Inuk's God. A desire was burning inside him. And so he decided to give himself to this new faith. There is an Inuit way. When the people want to give their whole heart into something, they make a ritual. So Anguatizwak thought he would kill a seal so that the people might share its meat and its blood together. That is when he told his people, I've made a choice. I'm going to go out to hunt seal. If I catch one tonight, I'm going to give my life, and I'm going to practice this ritual. But if I don't catch anything, I'm not going to do it. There was no moon, no stars that night, just heavy clouds. So Anguatizwak knew it would be hard to find seal, but he wanted to do it. So he went out onto the frozen ocean to look for a breathing hole. Even in the dark, he found one, but the seal was not there. He had to wait. It was very cold, so he built a little wall of ice to protect from the wind. Then he sat down and made his harpoon ready to strike the seal. When after some time the seal didn't come, he fell asleep. While Anguatizwak was sleeping, the dream came again. He saw it until one time his head became heavy, and he woke up. When he opened his eyes, he looked down at the breathing hole. There was something different. He realized he could see his shadow. Something very strange on a moonless winter night. Suddenly the area began to get brighter and brighter, and that was when he saw them. Anguatizwak saw three beings that looked like they had wings. Wings! They were coming down from out of the clouds. They did not speak, but Anguatizwak knew why they had come. As soon as they left, a seal came out of the hole. Anguatizwak put the harpoon into it and dragged it back to the camp. The people were still sleeping. Later, they came out of their tents and igloos and shared that seal. That is when Anguatizwak and his people started to follow Chisuasi. Many years later, the missionaries came and told us the whole story about God and His Son, as it is written in the Great Book. And we knew it was so.
We are all His. I am descendants of Him.
The Lord is near to all who call on Him, to all who call on Him in truth.
Canada's Eastern Arctic is divided into two primary domains: Nunavut, the country's newest self-governing territory, and Nunavik, an Inuit homeland in northern Quebec. Together, the region encompasses more than 2.7 million square kilometers. Remarkably, this vast and frigid landscape is inhabited by less than 30,000 natives.
For hundreds of years, they traveled in clans. They had no collective voice.
At these latitudes, the land is so cold that even trees refuse to grow. But it is the inner barrenness that does the real damage. For decades, the Inuit have struggled to find their identity. Robbed of any sense of place and purpose, many communities have spiraled toward the abyss.
There was this great void. So many from that generation, they turned to alcohol.
They lost their culture, so there was a lot of shame.
For this town, it was like dark, dark, dark.
It was like a nightmare.
It was awful. It was very awful. I remember when people would die, we would go for mourning and mourning. You know, we would be sad because we have no hope.
This is Kangetsudoak in northern Quebec, and we have about maybe around 500 people here.
Annie Terteluk has lived on Quebec's remote Ungava Peninsula since 1964. As Annie and her husband Mark know all too well, alcohol became a troublesome companion to many Inuit.
We were one of the worst couple in town because we were young and we were drinking.
When my heart was beating fast after drinking, I could hear trouble was waiting for me.
I think the whole community was drinking at that time.
I remember one time the whole community was drunk.
When we received our booths in the community all together, you would hear people shouting there.
I lost my brother because of alcohol.
People shouting here.
Lost a lot of friends.
People fighting here.
It was tearing up my life.
It was bad.
Oh my goodness, it was terrible.
There were no laws.
The frozen north was more like the Wild West.
No police.
Life was dangerous.
No rules in the community.
Our community was really sleepless people with all crimes that we had.
Women and children had little protection.
We had wife abuse, spousal assault.
My husband, he beat me. It's really hard that time.
Like many Inuit women, Eyuka Pinguatuk has had to balance relationships with the tasks of Arctic survival. It has not been easy.
I became a Christian when he was hunting, and he beat me for this.
Sexual assaults were another consequence of the ever-present booze. Eyuka's daughter, Alice, remembers the fear that attached itself to every young woman.
We had to protect ourselves from sexual abuse. When I was young, I was raped. That guy was drunk, and after that, I was shamed. I didn't like men. I was awful. My life was awful.
The wounds were deep and often reopened.
Nobody really talked about abuse or the hurts of the heart, of the emotions that I used to wish someone would talk to me, and nobody did.
To cover their pain, many young people turned to drugs, alcohol, and heavy metal music. Others simply walked through the door of no return.
I had a big mirror in my room, and I draw demons.
I have a sister. She was 22 when she killed herself. She hung herself.
On the Hudson Bay side of Arctic Quebec, the community of Povanatuq, or POV as the locals call it, has its own story to tell. It did not start well. By the summer of 1991, conditions in this isolated outpost were so grave that a CBC television crew was flown in to investigate. Their disturbing findings were aired that September on Canada's national news magazine, The Journal.
Something is happening in Povanatuq, a cluster of teenage suicides and self-inflicted wounds.
The story, entitled Deadly Summer, ran for nearly 17 minutes.
The 8th teenage suicide of the year, an appalling statistic. More than 20 times the Canadian average. Harry Tuluga, father of 5.
The first thing that comes to mind is, oh no, what can we do? Why? I was here for the total horror that was felt and expressed at the time.
And outside the arcade each morning, the local drugs of choice, solvents and lubricants.
We had an enormous epidemic of suicide of youth.
The death certificates coldly codify the toll of this awful year.
It seemed like there was one suicide every month. Then came the realization that a lot of our children were experiencing sexual abuse. Every single family was touched. It was total darkness at the time.
And the scene in POV was no different than any other northern community. Even the land turned its back on its inhabitants. In many areas of the eastern Arctic, caribou, fish, and berries once